Anyways, did you see all of the episode?
I saw all of episode 6.
Okay, even after the credits thing with the music?
Should I?
Yes, you should. After that. Because
okay.
there's an important part after that.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll see if I can get to that without Netflix skipping ahead. So I've seen the end. I've seen the ending now.
Yes.
That completely changes everything.
Yeah, I know, right?
Let's go ahead and read the intro, and then we'll discuss this.
Welcome to Brotherhood, a spoiler-filled podcast where we review each episode of the deliciously nightmare-inducing TV show, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. My name is Timothy MacArthur, the taller brother.
And my name is Dylan MacArthur, the older brother.
Today's episode, Road of Hope.
The mythical road that plays Stairway to Heaven every time someone crosses it.
Or Randy Newman's You've Got a Friend in Me.
It's basically a pedestrian's Russian roulette.
Now with only 40% less death.
And that was after the budget cuts. So,
good thing no one's found that.
Here's the thing about this episode is that I wrote about my average number of notes for this episode, but I think because there were just so many small little things that was like, okay, I need to think about this. There's not a whole lot that I can say about this episode right now, because I think so much of it is about sort of
what happens later?
Yeah, I guess in a sense. There's a lot of setup, not in the same way that we've seen in previous episodes where
oh boy,
they were sort of setting up the entire show. I think in this instance, we're seeing small character arcs being built up here. And maybe even built up is the wrong word. It's sort of like opening up the door for certain things to happen in the future.
And it's cool. It's actually a pretty good episode, in my opinion. I mean, with all the action that happened in the other episodes, this is a good episode to have.
The word that came to my mind after I finished it, and I know that there's a negative connotation to it, but it's the best word that I can think of. This is a filler episode.
Kind of.
I mean, obviously, that little bit at the end that I wouldn't have watched if you hadn't told me to go back and watch it, obviously that is going to become a huge thing, if not next episode, episodes to come. So I think that this might be an episode where we really do need to break this down scene by scene, because otherwise my notes just aren't going to take us all the way through.
There's a lot that actually goes on in this episode. There isn't a lot of action necessarily.
There's a lot that goes on in this episode that you're not told what it means right now.
But you can tell that it means something later on.
Right. Like, obviously, I mean, the impression that I got was that this is a very well-crafted episode, that there's a lot of technical showmanship that went into this episode, but I just don't know what any of it means. So, like, I guess...
and even without all the fighting, it still has some really good moments of tension.
We begin at King's Cross Station, at platform 9 and 3, Who Gives a Care?
It's not King's Cross Station, I don't think. Is it really called that?
No. We begin at a train station with Edward and Alphonse, and also an immaculately dressed Louis Armstrong, Dr. Manhattan. I don't know what we're going to call him.
I think for him, we should start having a strip counter. Like for every episode he's in, like in the description, we should have a counter for how many times he's stripped since the first episode we've seen him.
It'd be like one of those, how many days since the last workman's accident?
It would be exactly like that.
2 episodes without any casualties. Oh, he took his shirt off.
Never mind, there has been a casualty.
This is my first note that I have for the episode is, how nice of Armstrong to wear a nice suit today. Wonder if it'll last this whole episode.
And it doesn't.
Well, I mean, the nice thing is that it does, but off screen. There is a little bit of a fake out later on where we see him completely de-shirted, but we discover that no, he had the decency to carefully unbutton before breaking out into his little thing that he does. But they're taking off. They're going to go visit Winry and Grandma. What was her name again? It starts with a P?
I think it's Pinocchio or
Pinocchio. They go to visit Grandma Pinocchio.
It's not Pinocchio, but I guess the way I pronounced it. I'm probably butchering it.
Okay, fine. I'm just going to look it up. Okay, so
I don't know if that name's in English, though. It'd probably...
Pinocchio Rockbell.
Her name does sound like it would come from that area where Pinocchio is supposed to come from.
Pinocchio is Italian. I'm going to say nah.
Well, maybe not Italian, but maybe somewhere close to that area. Which part of Europe is that? Western, Eastern?
That's Southern Europe.
Northern, East, West, whatever.
Well, I
Anyways,
mean, here's the thing, Timothy, about the West. The West has absolutely nothing to do with geography. It is just a term that people living in the West were like, yeah, we're the West. Everybody else, they're the East. Never mind the fact that they happen to be further west than we are geographically. Nah, they're the East.
that is a little weird. But I guess it kind of stuck.
So they go on their magical train journey, and we have this lovely little gag where Edward turns to Armstrong and says, BT Dubs, where's my bro? And we cut to shot.
He doesn't say that literally. And I did watch the sub to this time. He did not say that. I mean, he did say...
I might be translating a little bit, but we
translating.
cut to a shot of a bunch of sheep doing their thing, and then in this crate we see Alphonse's pointy little head just sticking out, and he's just sort of hanging out there.
Yeah, he looked a little... What's the word? He looked like he could be in a little distress about the situation. I'm pretty sure I would be too.
I don't know. I got the impression that he was just sort of hanging out. It's like, well, I'm here now. Better not talk to myself right now, or else people might get scared.
Hi, guys. I'm a suit of armor. Ah!
And then I don't know about you, but there's something about trains, like watching trains go, that it feels very...
Nostalgic, perhaps?
Yeah, I guess that might be a good word for it.
Trains are a portal for nostalgia.
This whole series of shots where we're watching them go from Central to wherever it is, the countryside that they're going to.
Resembool.
It's tranquil. There's something nostalgic about it. It feels like almost like we're going home, even though we have literally spent less than half an episode in this place.
Yeah, it did feel like a very homey episode.
And then they arrive in Resembool, and Armstrong has his little moment where he shouts to a guy that he recognizes and is like, hello, I'm intimidating. Be intimidated.
Yeah, the guy's name is Dr. Marco.
So we have this little distraction now that we have to go on. And so they go to visit Armstrong's old, quote-unquote, friend, who, as soon as the door opened, immediately tries to shoot them. To which Armstrong's response is, he probably needs just something to cool him down. How about I throw a suit of armor at his face? That chills me out.
Well, it's more of the suit of armor being held within a box.
Which, fundamentally changes the experience because, it's a heavy thing. Actually, it's a heavier thing.
But at least then he doesn't get all the spikes to the face from the suit of armor. He might get some splinters, but he doesn't get as many spikes to the face.
I mean, he doesn't get anything because the very next shot is him just sitting at a table being like, okay, so what are we going to do now?
Not with that voice, though.
And we discover that Sean Connery has slipped into this episode by some freak accident. But in Hebrew, Yehovah starts with an I. And we discover that this guy has been working his miracles because he, as part of his research for Amestris, he has discovered how to make a philosopher's stone, which, two things. First off, I'm surprised that we're discovering a legit philosopher's stone in episode 6. I would have expected maybe like the third way mark, maybe, but nope, we've got one right here, right now.
I'm covering my mouth right now, just so you know.
Okay. Anyway, the other thing that I have about this moment is that, what was I going to say?
Dang it, Dylan, you're freaking killing me.
Well, I mean, this isn't the stony stone. This is like This is the alpha release. He's not even ready for a beta release yet. This is just the alpha. And he's like, I've spent enough time working on this thing. I'm done compiling an Xcode here. You guys can take it. But they're like, nah, you need it. And this was something that I don't think I have a note for it, but I was very impressed that they don't take it. Even though like this is their fundamental defining goal in the story is to find a philosopher's stone and to get their bodies back, they don't take it because they're smart enough to be like, this is probably how he's saving people. Yeah, we're going to leave it to him.
Because before they ask villagers or whatever, I don't know what to call them. Let's just call them the villagers in this place.
To which they respond, here's that way.
No. They, not Minecraft villagers.
I'll trade you information for 12 diamonds.
They ask the people in the area who are not Minecraft villagers.
And they say, yeah, he's great. He's a super cool dude. And there's an interesting contrast. He stands in direct parallel to the priest from episode 3.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, because people are talking about these miraculous things that he can do, that like there's a flash of light and they're healed of all their ailments. So right away you're given there's some connection between these two people, even if you don't know what it is.
But in this case, they're not talking about him as if he's God. They're talking about him as if he's a really cool doctor.
And in this episode, they clarify what happened in episode 3, saying, actually, that was a philosopher's stone, but it was a really bad one.
Yeah, well, it didn't have stuff, whatever that stuff is.
It didn't have the chemical X or the love or whatever the missing ingredient
Dylan,
is.
You're killing me.
I'm sure that it's probably going to be people, because what else would it be?
Bleep that out.
But I mean, what else is it going to be? Because we have this really creepy show where they're talking about how Edward is going to make a great sacrifice, and they're talking about how like life is super important, and the only way to exchange life is with life.
Why did you have to say that theory? Okay, after this, do not post this episode. We're gonna need to watch the next one.
Yeah, we're totes gonna watch the next one. But this is the first complaint that I have about the episode, though, when they start getting into the drama of the scene. Because this is a character, Dr. Marco, who we have come to sort of appreciate and understand rather quickly as he is discovering more and more about these brothers, and as he is coming to see their passion overwhelming their reason. It terrifies him, and this is great drama. Not quite as dramatic as the music wants us to think, though.
Yeah, you're probably right, but it's still...
it is...
still a good episode. It's still a good part of the episode.
This is a moment where you would absolutely want to have a cue, because it's a big moment. It's one of the highlights of the episode. You want to have something that can sort of push it over the edge, but this was the wrong cue to do that. It is
wrong way. You're going the wrong way.
It is way too dramatic. I would have preferred something that was more fundamentally unsettling. Maybe if they had introduced a cue, which I know that they have some in here, where it's not quite as tonal, where it shifts, maybe have a few solo instruments drifting and layering on top of each other.
I have no idea what you're saying, because I do not consume music the same way you do.
Basically what I'm saying is that you need something that is a little more sonically subtle at this moment. And you need something which, in terms of...
nothing like dun dun dun. Like the exact opposite of that.
The exact opposite of what they were doing. And have a little bit more misdirection in terms of what is the scale of this song. This isn't going to be a good example in terms of what I was saying with tonality, but it is a good example of what I mean in terms of subtlety, is the orchestral cue that plays during Pippin's scene in Return of the King when he sings, "Home is behind, the world ahead." And you have these strings that just gently come in. They never become a prominent part of it, but they layer on top of each other, and they build in such a way that moves with the drama of the scene. You never notice them explicitly, but they do push it over the edge.
Which is a good thing, because sometimes you don't want to exactly hear the music, you just need to feel it.
Exactly. And in this instance, you felt it more than it really warranted. My next note that I have is that after Edward says, "We've already seen hell," this is a moment where typically what you would do is you would have a close-up of Dr. Marco and his reaction. But here's one of the nice things about film is that in addition to compressing time, you can also rearrange it so that we don't see their reaction until after they've already left, which is a great little thing because it forces his reaction to be an internal one rather than a reactionary one.
Yeah, I think you just see the outside the building they're in.
Right, you see the outside of the building, you see them walking away, Edward looks back, and you sort of expect to see some sort of reaction from him in the window, but he's not in the window. It's a very personal, very introspective moment when he's thinking about it to himself.
He has just told them to leave, and you don't get to see him for the most part after that. Until they get to the station. He says, "Hey guys, I've got this piece of paper, and it includes information on it. Want to eat the piece of paper?"
Yeah.
For more knowledge.
He's like, "These are the directions. Follow them carefully." And it's just like the name of a library. And it's like, "Oh, that's a great idea. Hide the most valuable information in the world in a library. No one will think to look for information in a library."
Well, there's tons of information in the library, Dylan, so it's like hiding a certain kind of tree in a forest. Sure, it may sound stupid until you realize that you're going to have to look through a crap ton of trees.
In which case, it sounds smart until you realize that there are people whose entire job it is to look through trees.
Now, where did it put that darn tree?
In fact, there are many jobs where people specialize in what kind of trees they look for. And I wouldn't be surprised if there were people...
Are we still going with the metaphor here?
Oh, yeah, we're still sticking to that metaphor. But I'm saying that academic types, people who do research, they go to the library and they look for a book. Then they go again, and then they go again, and eventually they just stop coming back home. Sorry, I meant grad school students. Anyway.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Marco returns back to his home, and he shuts the door, and we see what I was waiting for, basically from the moment we saw him. Like,
Stretchy Claus.
Stretchy Claus has come, and she has a gift. The gift of interrogation? I guess that was the true meaning of Christmas all along.
You don't exactly get to see the gift.
Ah, goodness. Stretchy Claus, the joke that won't die. Anyway. But we have no idea. I mean, we're not really told what she's there for. It could be that Dr. Marco is dead now. It could be that he's about to do a favor for them. We don't know. All we know is that he has a Philosopher's Stone, which makes him very valuable to bad people. And also good people. But more importantly, the bad people, which in this case includes Stretchy Claus and Jack Jack.
I'm sorry. I'm glad you also called the other character Jack Jack. That was funny.
We are then taken to the land of Rockbell Automail, where, gosh, I love these characters.
Where they have really good characters. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. The grandma and Winry are just so... they're so delightful.
Awesome. Yeah, you could tell that the grandma is one of those people who, if you tried to do a battle of wills against her, you'd lose.
She's a very strongly defined character, even though she is not maybe not necessarily physically strong in terms of activity, but absolutely in terms of she has objectives, she has desires, and she feels like a living, breathing character.
Yeah, she does. And she feels like someone who, if, like I said before, if anyone were to battle her, they'd lose.
Skipping ahead here, there's this thing that I love that they do, which is as Edward is sleeping and Alphonse is standing over him, the three other members of this family have a little conversation together where they talk about how Edward never really expresses his feelings to them. What Grandma says in this instance is, we don't do that whole touchy-feely thing here. That's lame. We all kind of get that we appreciate each other, and we express our appreciation for each other by coming home every once in a while.
But this gives me an idea. A terrible idea.
Oh boy.
Fullmetal Alchemist, the musical. Because I imagined you saying, we express
our emotions through song and dance. When Winry was a little girl and her father was off to war, he died a terrible cause. Anything goes.
Okay, we're done now. That idea is officially going to be put into a fire. Okay.
They spend some time there while they're working on the automail, and Winry says, yeah, we could probably take a week, but I'm a really audacious character who takes this as a matter of personal pride, so I'm going to do it in 3 days.
It's a good idea.
I mean, it's a terrible idea. You never want to do anything for 3 days straight because her work
unless of course it's something that isn't advanced robotics. Like,
I mean, here's the deal, Timothy. Like, anytime you do anything that you do for 3 days straight without sleeping, you end up forgetting pretty important stuff. Like, I don't know, an A08 screw.
Which you realize does happen towards the end of the episode. You realize that happened.
Or if you're like me, you realize that happens after your brother tells you, by the way, did you watch that important scene? And you're like, what important scene? Go watch that scene.
Go watch it now.
Watch the scene where Nick Fury tells you that... that joke isn't going to work. Anyway.
Watch the scene where the Eagles come in and die.
The Eagles are coming. The Eagles are coming. If that's how this show ends. Oh, God. Then the Eagles came in, and it turns out that their mother was now Mother the White. We have this lovely little montage, I guess maybe is the right word of it, where we start to get a little bit more... Sorry. Not a training montage, Timothy. I mean a montage in terms of like what a montage actually is, which is the compression of time. We're seeing these little character bits with Edward and Alphonse, also Armstrong and Pinocchio, which that was interesting. I was not expecting that.
When I watched the first episode for the first time, this episode for the first time, I was not expecting that either.
You don't see it coming, but it is such a welcome interaction between these two characters who are themselves strong in their own ways. Edward goes to visit his mother's grave, and he takes with him a dog who, in a weird bit of visual symmetry, has an automail leg.
Yep.
And
granted, dogs don't necessarily have arms. They have all legs.
Right, but this was one of those moments where I was like, I'm not going to be able to take notes for the rest of this episode because there's too much here that's making me think. Like, why does he take the dog with him?
Well, I know that the dog is Pineco's.
I mean, the thought that's coming to my mind is that I'm remembering the term that they give to state alchemists, which is dogs of the military.
Oh my gosh! That's right!
But I don't know if that's necessarily what they were trying to insinuate by visually pairing him with a dog.
Maybe that was what they were going for. I don't know.
This is something that I'm going to be thinking about probably for episodes to come, but it was just so visually striking that here are characters who are both disabled. There's a visual symmetry between them, that the arm that is missing from Edward is perfectly reflected in the leg that is missing in the dog.
Yep.
That can't be an accident. That has to be deliberate. And I'm wondering what exactly it is that they were insinuating there. I'm glad that they didn't make it obvious, because that could have been something that would have been really painful. But instead, it's something
that would have been
sort of
really painful if it were obvious. But I'm glad you pointed that out to me. That is awesome. Now that I know this, I'm like, oh my gosh.
The other note that I have, and the last note that I have, is in regards to the home, because we've been seeing the particular intro that we have for this part of the series 6 times now, maybe more if you're like me and you have been watching episode 2 on repeat for the past few weeks. And I've been wondering...
You really liked that episode.
I really loved episode 2, but there's a moment in the intro where we see their old home and it's on fire. And ever since I noticed that in the intro, I've been wondering, when is that going to come up? Like, when are they going to return home and evil comes to find them in home as well? Saying that out loud, I realize that that is a stupid thing to say because evil found them there in the very beginning. But I thought it was very interesting that we don't see that. Like, it's part of the intro.
You don't ever actually see them burning their house down.
Because the intro is a metaphor and also a sort of... It is the backstory that you need in order to understand what is going on here. I imagine that there's a lot in the intro. In fact, there is almost certainly a lot in the intro that is only there because it visually jumpstarts the story and not because you're actually going to see any of it in the show.
Yep.
I thought it's a little bit weird that the grandma is so casual about describing, oh yeah, and then he burned his house down.
Yeah, that was a little weird in my opinion, too. Like,
even in the subbed version, she's just like, and then he burned the house down. She's just so casual about it, you know, like any 10-year-old would.
Well, he already went through some pretty crazy stuff, you know, maybe.
And they do try to justify it, but still, arson is still arson.
It's like, he still burned his own house down. I mean, sure, maybe he wants to forget what he did. Or maybe he doesn't want to go back to that failurist idea. But still, it's like, that sounds a little crazy.
There's a reason that we use the expression burn the house to the ground as a funny saying, because it is very extreme. Normal people don't burn houses to the ground.
Well, he might have gone a little insane when he went through the gate thing, you know?
Also, here is, and
that was really disturbing.
Not even kidding you. The first thing that I thought when I saw that shot of the smolder of the remains of the burned down house was, please tell me he took out all the books. Please.
Yeah, that would suck if he didn't.
Because they had a library. They had a lot of books.
Yeah, I know. They did. They should. If they didn't take out all the books, that'd be dumb of them.
Be like, what?
Be like, all these books on alchemy. Let's just go off of memory on them. I mean, they're alchemists. What the crap? Why would they burn down the house with all the books in it on alchemy?
Any notes that you have for this episode, Tim?
I know this is an observation that has been made, but I really like how scenic this episode was. And
it's a very visual episode, and it's very leisurely in terms of pace.
I really especially liked a certain shot with the train. I was like, wow, I would totally take that for a screensaver. Because it looks really awesome.
For me, the big moment with the train was watching it pull out of the station and chug into the countryside. For me, that was a moment of just like, that's kind of magical.
Yeah.
It's a great way of punching the story right into a new direction, being like, we're going here now. We're not going to worry about any of that other stuff for a while. This is what we're going to do. I do have a few questions for you.
Yeah.
Does Edward have a transmutation circle in his arm, or does he just know how to do alchemy without circles?
I think the idea is that he's is that he makes the circle. Like when it claps, it's kind of like him making a circle. He thinks of it and then he claps. And that's how, and it's sort of like an artificial creation of it's more of a, so it's kind of, he is creating a circle using him as part of it. Kind of. As like, he is the circle. So when he claps, he is the circle.
They have not done a very good job of explaining that in the show then, because in episode 2, he makes a point about being like, they make a point about, oh, he doesn't need a transmutation circle anymore. He can do it on his own now. But then in episode 5, when Scar is having his having his Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock moment where he's Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr.
When Scar is having his Robert Downey Jr. from Sherlock moment, where he's analyzing everything about Edward and being like, oh, so when he puts his hands together, he's creating a transmutation circle, and I can use that against him by breaking his arm, and then he won't be able to do alchemy, and he'll be really smart, and he's super fast about it. But that comes out of nowhere, like, and in sort of direct contrast to what we've already been told. I hope that they make this more clear in the future of exactly how Edward is doing magic stuff here.
Alchemy. It's not as cool when you call it magic in this instance.
But it is functionally magic.
Yes, functionally. But it isn't as cool when you call it magic in this instance.
But you know what I mean.
Yes, I know what you mean. But I don't think Fullmetal Magician sounds as cool as Fullmetal Alchemist.
On today's episode of Fullmetal Magician, Timmy pulls a cat out of the well and turns it into a rabbit, which he pulls out of a hat. Oh, Timmy, you've saved the day!
You're such a dork.
Ah, but can Timmy escape from my triple-padded locked cell? Tune in next week to find out when my dastardly plan comes to fruition. Starring Orson Welles.
Such dorks. Starring Orson Welles?
As Citizen Kane!
Oh my god. What have we done?
This episode has been a train wreck brought to you by New
Thomas,
Year's Eve.
the train wreck.
It works because they're trains. Wouldn't that have been great if you had like a front shot of the train coming forward and all of a sudden Thomas's face just appears like, ha!
No, Thomas crashes through the ceiling of the station.
Where the blazes did a train come from? Tune in next week to find the Fullmetal Magician, Timmy, try to stop Thomas the Tank Engine from running into the Edward brothers.
Ulrich brothers.
He doesn't care.
The announcer, of course, doesn't care because the announcer is you. And you're the only one who's going to be working on that story. I'm not going to help you. Not even picture.
Edward and his brother, Edward's brother.
Okay, we're done. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.